So picture this. You are in the middle of the absolute worst plague the Roman Empire has ever seen.
Oh, just as a casual Tuesday.
Right. I mean, the economy is collapsing, wars are literally breaking out on multiple borders, and the emperor is outside.
Yeah.
But he's not rallying the troops. He's outside, studying the forehead of a wild boar.
Which is just wild to think about.
Totally wild. He was literally standing in a field, taking notes on how wheat bends under its own weight. And today, we're unpacking why the ultimate survival tool for navigating the chaos of your modern life is actually hiding in that exact bizarre moment.
Because, I mean, it sounds completely counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
When the world is falling apart around you, our human instinct is to, lock ourselves in a room and just obsess over the problem.
Exactly, panic mode.
Right, panic mode. But looking really closely at this specific moment from history reveals a radically different approach to crisis management.
And that approach is the grounding source for today's deep dive. We are looking at this brilliant essay that analyzes a curated philosophical journal entry, and it's known as Day 132.
Yeah, Day 132.
And the sources compiled in this single day's entry are just a completely wild mix. Like, you have the Stoic Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius sitting right alongside Atari founder Nolan Bushnell.
Quite the dinner party.
I know, right? And you also have modern authors like Ryan Holiday and Stephen Pressfield sitting next to military leader Colin Powell and the ancient philosopher Lao Tzu.
Yeah, on the surface, it really reads like a chaotic assortment of voices. I mean, they're from entirely different eras, totally different professions, completely different philosophical traditions.
But the mission of this deep dive
Yeah.
is to show you how these totally disparate voices are secretly having a unified, brilliant conversation about one central question, which is, how do we actually live well amid chaos?
Yeah.
It's kind of like opening a junk drawer full of random mismatched tools. You know the drawer I'm talking about.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone has one.
Right. You think none of it goes together.
Ah.
But when you step back and you fit the pieces together perfectly, you realize they build this incredibly resilient survival machine. Okay, let's unpack this. We really have to start with the physical body before we even try to conquer the mind.
We do.
Like, we know Bushnell's notes
Yeah.
from the early Atari days show him constantly walking.
Yeah, Bushnell explicitly notes that his biggest, most structural ideas didn't come from staring intensely at a whiteboard
Right.
or, grinding through some marathon meeting. They came simply from taking a deep breath, going outside, and just walking in the sunshine.
Which mirrors Aurelius perfectly. Because Aurelius wasn't writing his meditations from some peaceful, serene villa,
No, definitely not.
He was writing them from the mud and blood of the front lines,
Ugh.
or literally while managing the Antonine Plague. Yet the texts show him constantly leaving the imperial tent to just go outside and observe nature.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we realize these walks were not leisure.
Right, they weren't vacations.
Exactly. They weren't a hobby or a quick break to just stretch his legs. The essay categorizes these walks as epistemological.
Epistemological, that's a big word for a walk.
It is, yeah. But meaning the walk actually changes the physical hardware of how your brain processes facts.
Wow.
You literally cannot perceive reality the same way when you are trapped in a small, artificially lit room versus standing under a massive sky.
So it's not a break from the work. The walk is the work.
Precisely.
It forces your brain to recalibrate its sense of scale.
Yeah.
It really makes me think of zooming out on a digital map.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, like when you have the app zoomed all the way in on your specific location, a traffic jam 2 blocks away takes up your entire screen.
Yeah, it looks massive.
Right, it looks at the absolute end of the world.
Yeah.
But when you pinch and you zoom out, suddenly you see the whole city, you see the whole continent.
Yep.
The traffic jam is still there, obviously, but its scale has completely changed. The walk forces your brain to zoom out.
And that shift in scale is precisely why the big ideas are actually out there. I mean, when you are zoomed in on the traffic jam of your daily anxieties, your prefrontal cortex is completely hijacked.
Hijacked by the immediate threat.
Right. Stepping outside into the vastness of nature reminds you that the Earth is largely indifferent to the concerns of any one emperor or, any one stressed out employee.
Which is strangely comforting.
It really is. That realization doesn't diminish your work. It actually frees up the cognitive load you need to solve the problem.
That internal clarity is so crucial. But let's be real, it inevitably gets shattered the second you interact with the actual world.
Oh, immediately.
Right. Like, how does this zoomed out perspective survive contact with an aggressive coworker or a completely chaotic environment? Because zooming out physically is one thing, but reacting to the people around us is the true test.
It is, which is where Marcus Aurelius makes a pretty bold, almost dangerous claim.
Yeah.
He argues that kindness is invincible, but he adds a massive caveat to that. It must be sincere, unhypocritical kindness.
Sincere and unhypocritical. And Ryan Holiday unpacks this beautifully by dissecting the psychology of cruelty.
Right.
Because when people are rude or aggressive, they're essentially following a script. They launch an attack and they expect retaliation.
Exactly. They want the fight.
Yeah, they want you to fight back because that validates their aggression. But Holiday argues that rudeness is almost always a mask for deep-seated weakness and insecurity.
It's a defense mechanism. So when you respond to that weakness with true, unhypocritical kindness, you actually require massive internal strength.
Yeah.
And more importantly, you induce immediate cognitive dissonance in the aggressor.
Cognitive dissonance.
Right. The essay notes the biblical reference to this as heaping burning coals on someone's head. You completely short-circuit their script.
I love that phrase, short-circuit their script.
It's so accurate. When you meet aggression with unmitigated kindness, the aggressor's weapon is rendered useless because the friction they need to maintain their anger just isn't there anymore.
What caught me completely off guard here is the actual source of this strength.
Oh, yeah.
Like you'd expect the Emperor of Rome to learn this invincible stoic kindness from some decorated military general or maybe one of the great philosophers he employed.
Sure.
But the journal reveals he learned it from his mother. He specifically reflects on her reverence, her generous way of living, and her inability to even conceive of doing wrong.
It's incredible.
She didn't lecture him on the cognitive dissonance of stoic kindness. She just lived it in front of him every single day.
It's an incredibly humbling insight into how values actually transfer between human beings.
Yeah.
The essay pairs Marcus's reflection with a quote from Colin Powell, who makes the exact same observation about his own parents. Powell noted that his parents gave him a really rigid set of values, but they did it by living them, not by lecturing him about them.
Right, they just embodied it.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is the assertion about the nature of virtue itself. True character is transmitted, not taught.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Think about the friction in your own life. We exhaust ourselves trying to argue our values into existence.
We really do.
We spend so much energy trying to convince our coworkers we are right. Or, lecturing our kids on how they should behave. Or debating strangers on the internet, which is always a great idea.
Oh yeah, always highly productive.
But Marcus's mother just quietly lived her values. She completely bypassed the argument entirely. And her quiet embodiment of virtue ended up shaping the ruler of the known world.
It really forces a mirror up to our own behavior. Like, are we performing our values or are we embodying them?
Wow, yeah. Performance versus embodiment.
Because embodiment is quiet, it's consistent, and it's structural. Performance is loud, exhausting, and usually completely ineffective.
Yeah.
The walk outside is the lesson. The daily kindness is the sermon.
That sounds really beautiful when you have the space to breathe and practice embodiment.
Sure.
But what happens when that quiet fortitude gets violently interrupted? Your plans fall apart, your patience runs out, and chaos just punches you right in the mouth. Does this philosophy actually survive actual disruption?
Well, this is where the source material pivots from the theoretical to the intensely practical. Human beings have this deeply ingrained psychological tendency to view disruptions as pauses in our real story.
Oh, like hitting pause on a movie.
Exactly. We think, once I get past this annoying obstacle, once this project is fixed, once this crisis is over, I can finally get back to my life.
But Ryan Holiday takes Marcus Aurelius's famous maxim, the obstacle is the way, and he radically reframes it for exactly this scenario.
Yeah, he does.
He says the irritating person who derailed your meeting or the project that just blew up, the massive disruption to your schedule, those aren't detours from your life. They are your life now.
Yeah.
The mission hasn't been delayed at all. The mission is just adapted.
Yeah.
It just requires more patience and maybe forgiveness than you originally budgeted for.
Holiday is really confronting our toxic modern obsession with waiting for ideal conditions.
Right.
We tell ourselves we'll start writing when we have a quieter office. Or, we'll be more patient when we aren't so stressed out.
We'll launch the business when the market is perfectly aligned.
Exactly. But Sinek points out in the journal that it fundamentally doesn't matter when or where you start. The act of starting itself is what generates the momentum.
And David Schwartz reinforces this by dissecting the psychology of momentum.
Mm.
He says that people who actually get things done in this world, they don't wait for the spirit to move them, they move the spirit.
Yes.
The idea that you need to be in the right mood to tackle an obstacle is just a total fallacy. The mood follows the action, not the other way around.
The person waiting for the perfect mood or the ideal set of circumstances is honestly waiting for a ghost.
A ghost, yeah.
The conditions will never be perfect. Adapting your mission to the violent obstacle right in front of you, acting decisively in entirely imperfect circumstances, that is the actual work of living.
It's like imagine sitting down to play what you think is a standard polite game of chess. You have your strategy, you know the rules. But suddenly, your opponent moves a knight completely diagonally across the board and just knocks over half your pieces.
Wow.
You can sit there and complain that they are breaking the rules of chess. Or you can realize you are no longer playing chess.
You're playing rugby now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are playing a completely different game of survival. You can't just sit there waiting for the chess pieces to be set back up. You have to adapt to the game that is actually being played.
And adapting to that new game, when the rules have seemingly vanished, requires a tremendous amount of internal stability.
Yeah, it does.
If the mission is constantly shifting and the world is throwing unpredictable chaos at you, what is the foundation that keeps you from falling over while you try to figure out the new rules?
Which brings us to the strangest, yet arguably most profound part of this source material. We get a sequence from the author Steven Pressfield, where he recounts this incredibly vivid dream.
Oh, the eagle dream.
Yes, the eagle dream. In the dream, an eagle lands on his shoulders, he merges with it, and he takes off flying. And Pressfield pays very close attention to the physics of the dream.
Right.
He notes that the invisible air under the eagle's wings actually feels as dense and solid as water feels to a rower pulling an oar.
It's such a specific image.
It really is. He realizes that an eagle isn't fighting to stay in the sky. The invisible air is actually a substantial load-bearing force holding it up. And the journal then pairs this imagery with a quote from Lao Tzu, "Those who know do not speak."
It's a really striking metaphor for the unseen forces that actually support our lives.
I have to push back a little hard on this, though, because we're talking about tangible survival mechanisms for modern chaos. Solid air sounds incredibly poetic, but, poetry doesn't pay the rent.
Fair point.
How does Steven Pressfield expect you to operationalize a dream about an eagle when you're staring down a massive budget shortfall or you're managing a completely dysfunctional team?
No, it's a completely fair challenge. If we just leave it as poetry, it's pretty useless.
Okay.
But let's round the metaphor in the mechanics we've already outlined. What exactly are the invisible things Pressfield is talking about?
Well, they are the exact quiet actions we've been discussing.
Oh, I see.
A daily walk in the sunshine to reset your cognitive scale. A mother's unspoken, consistent example of integrity. A moment of unhypocritical kindness that short-circuits an aggressor's cognitive dissonance.
But society generally dismisses those. We literally call them soft skills.
Exactly. We call them soft or weightless because they don't show up on a corporate balance sheet. They can't easily be quantified on a resume.
Right.
But Pressfield and Lao Tzu are arguing that these invisible, unquantifiable habits are actually the most solid, load-bearing forces in human existence.
Wow.
When the chessboard is flipped and the rules vanish, your technical skills might totally fail you.
Yeah.
But your internal fortitude, those soft habits, they are the solid air that keeps you from crashing to the ground.
That reframes it completely. The deepest, most structural knowledge doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to speak, just as Lao Tzu says. It just holds you up.
But as inspiring as it is to think about these invisible virtues supporting us, we really have to stress test this.
Definitely.
Let's be real. We live in the actual world.
Yeah.
Aren't a lot of these noble gestures completely fabricated? Like, we all know people who perform kindness strictly to manipulate a situation or get ahead.
And that reality is precisely why the journal includes a necessary cold splash of cynicism.
Good.
A philosophy that celebrates virtue without acknowledging that virtue can be weaponized is just dangerously naive.
And the journal introduces author Robert Greene and political strategist Saul Alinsky to provide that splash of water.
Yeah, a bucket of ice water, really.
Seriously, Alinsky explicitly warns that we live in a world not of angels, but of angles. Everyone has an angle. And Greene illustrates this with the historical story of an art dealer named Joseph Duveen.
Right, the National Gallery story.
Exactly. Duveen was instrumental in creating the National Gallery of Art, and on paper, to the general public, it looked like this incredibly generous, noble gesture.
But Green dissects the actual mechanics behind the gesture. And it wasn't generosity at all, it was a highly calculated tax strategy.
Of course it was.
By donating certain pieces, Duveen created a mechanism to clear out his own stagnant inventory, secure massive tax shelters, and simultaneously artificially inflate the market prices of the paintings he still privately owned.
It's just the ultimate counterfeit virtue. So I have to ask you, does Green's cynical take ruin the entire idealistic foundation of Day 132?
That's the big question.
Like, if even the creation of the National Gallery is just a tax scam, should we be fundamentally suspicious of everyone's kindness? Is everyone just working an angle?
It really doesn't ruin the philosophy at all. It actually provides its integrity.
Really? How so?
Well, Green's entry is the crucial stress test for everything we've discussed. It forces us to distinguish between virtue as a performance and virtue as an identity.
Okay.
Let's apply Alinsky's angle test to Marcus Aurelius' mother. Does she pass the Duveen test?
Well, Marcus wrote that doing wrong wasn't just illogical to her, it was inconceivable.
Precisely. She passes the test because she had absolutely nothing to gain from her quiet example. There was no PR campaign.
No tax shelter.
Right, no tax shelter. She wasn't performing her virtue for an audience. There is no angle when kindness is a structural, foundational part of your identity.
That makes total sense.
Duveen's generosity was fragile because it depended on a financial outcome. The mother's virtue was invincible because it was simply who she was.
There's no audience for her, just like there's no audience when you're taking a walk outside to clear your head. The action is the reward itself.
Which is the core distinction. Virtue performed for an audience is full of angles. Virtue embodied as identity is solid air.
So if you want to build that kind of unshakable, authentic identity, one that actually passes the cynic's test, where do you practically begin?
Right.
Because the journal points us directly to the most finite, uncompromising resource we have, our time. Novelist Philip Meyer and the ancient Stoic Seneca both issue severe warnings about time management. They argue you have to be ruthlessly careful about who and what gets the best part of your day.
And Ryan Holiday makes this uncomfortably practical. He asks you to examine the very first thing you do when you wake up.
Oh boy.
Yeah, you have a fresh day, a replenished mind. Do you start that day reaching for philosophy, presence, or a quiet walk? Or do you immediately reach for your phone to let the chaos of social media algorithms dictate your mental state?
Seneca was writing 2,000 years ago, so obviously long before smartphones. But his observation applies perfectly to our modern scrolling habits.
It really does.
He was completely baffled by human behavior regarding time. He pointed out that the wisest people in the world fiercely protect their physical property. Like they lock their doors, they guard their money.
Right.
Yet they are incredibly willing to just hand their time away to anyone or anything that demands it.
We hoard our money like dragons, but we leave the vault door to our time wide open.
Right.
We let endless news cycles, trivial arguments, and notifications just rob us blind every single morning.
And the journal closes out with quotes from author Robin Sharma and legendary coach Frosty Westring to counter this.
Yeah.
Sharma states that our ultimate value is determined by how people feel when they leave us. And Westring says, make the big time where you are. Just be radically present. So what does this all mean? When you synthesize all these disparate voices, you realize they're describing a continuous cycle of energy.
This raises an important question about how we actually allocate that energy.
Right.
If you leak your best energy to a screen the moment you wake up, you essentially have nothing left to give the people right in front of you.
Exactly. It's about taking the clarity and the wide perspective you gather from that epistemological walk in the sunshine and actively giving that replenished energy to your team, your family, your actual life.
Yeah.
You don't feed your best self to an algorithm. You guard your time so you have the strength to practice those invisible habits.
Which perfectly brings together the entire framework of Day 132. It isn't a random collection of quotes. It is one sustained, unified argument about resilience.
The physical walk outside recalibrates your brain's hardware so you can understand the philosophy.
Right.
The sincere kindness isn't separate from strength. It is the ultimate expression of it.
Yes.
Adapting to the obstacle isn't a delay of your mission. It is the mechanism of the mission itself. And trusting those invisible load-bearing habits is what keeps you flying when the cynics try to pull you down.
It really is all connected.
They are all interconnected gears in the machinery of living a good life amid chaos.
And I think the most empowering takeaway from this entire collection is that none of these tools are locked behind a paywall.
Huh.
Their demands are profoundly accessible.
You don't need to command a Roman Empire to apply this today. You don't need to engineer a complex tax shelter to build a national gallery or invent the video game industry.
Definitely not.
You just need to step outside your front door and look at the sky. You just need to treat the next aggressive email or canceled project as your new actual plan. You just need to guard the first hour of your morning for what actually matters.
The tools are already in your hands.
It's entirely up to you to assemble them. So we'll leave you with this one final original thought to mull over as you go back into your day.
Okay.
The next time you face an impossible, immovable wall in your life or your career, when that chessboard gets violently flipped over and chaos takes complete control, what if you reframe the physics of the moment?
I love that.
What if you treat that wall not as a barrier designed to break you, but as the exact custom-designed aerodynamic pressure you need to finally learn how to fly?
Wow.
The air out there is still incredibly solid. The only question left is whether you will extend your wings.